considered possibly some of the biggest champs in the game.
You couldn't ask for a more awesome match than this, Day9. In the bottom left position of Nimbus, the blue Terran player representing SK Telecom Team 1, he is INnoVation.
And in the top right-hand corner, clearly a favorite of the Cloud, 11 Premier Tournament wins under his belt, representing the website that got me into esports. It is Team Liquid's TaeJa.
TaeJa's got a lot of cheers here. He's earned it with his performances. You said it, 11 Premier Championships. There's not really anybody that beats that. He has the highest overall map win percentage in WCS despite not actually ever winning his region. He just he makes a really deep run every single season without losing and then just drops out quickly. But already in this game, we're seeing it, Day9. That gas first play, there's a reason why everybody loves it in this matchup.
You know, like you said, even though this seems like the correct map to always go for your early expansion on, it is tricky trying to just get up the ramp to your expansion once your opponent starts getting some big threatening units out there. This ramp is actually a little bit of an annoying choke to defend if your opponent is doing what we see these players doing, rushing for gas. Now, we talked a little bit about MMA versus Bomber. If both players go Banshee, no big deal. Almost every Terran player is equipped to deal with this. But if you open Banshee, what are the big scary threats that can catch you off guard easily? Yeah,
on a map this big, you're right, you make your Banshee. It takes a little bit longer than the medevac, but the time that it takes that medevac to reach your base can leave you thinking maybe you're a little bit too secure and your Banshee's gone, and all of a sudden that medevac shows up, and even if you have a few Marines, you can't kill it because the healing power is too strong, and if they bring some Hellions, builds like that really force you to be very, decisive with your maneuvers. It might even be better to just open up with a Raven so that you have a little bit more utility to hold off whatever build your opponent is doing.
There's some interesting, I almost want to call them non-timings that we're seeing these players look for. No scouting yet because they're trying to say, did you go Reaper? Are you going Reaper? I'm looking for the Reaper. And, right around now, players will begin to go, no, doesn't look like I'm seeing any Reaper. I might be not up against an early expander. I might be up against a fast gasser. TaeJa is actually the first one to move out. Both players going for the very fast second refinery, and this is typically done when players are doing a very tech-heavy play. And we're seeing no add-ons yet from TaeJa, but also no factory production.
Yeah, a key difference in the build orders of these two players. INnoVation going for the Reaper after first Marine. This is generally a build that's come up in the last couple of months, and it's really strong in going for that Banshee while also having the ability to deal. If you go with a Reaper scout, you end up with one Reaper versus a Reaper and a Hellion, and he's not only able to deny scouting of his gas first build, so TaeJa he's not sure what INnoVation's going for, but INnoVation will be able to duck in at some point.
Yeah, because right now TaeJa says, is INnoVation going for Reaper first, and he just got an unlucky scout? Or did he do that delayed expansion? It literally eliminates no possibilities from INnoVation's repertoire, and we see INnoVation relying a little bit more on factory tech, building Hellions continuously, and then using the barracks to get the tech lab add-on. And, on the flip side, we see TaeJa also doing a completely different setup. He's focusing on the barracks, building Marines, and then using the factory to build the tech lab.
Yeah, I mean, both of these styles can both lead into the same play. Banshee, Raven, I think most people are 50-50 on it. It just depends on what you're kind of feeling for that matchup. Some players like Bomber we've seen open up with 7 Banshees straight because he's like, I'm not going to be attacked. So you're not going to go Banshee. I'm just going to keep you defending all game long. And in certain situations that can pan out really well, but on a big map like this, every unit you commit, if an attack comes at you, you don't have the luxury of a small map to pull everything back from to defend.
And on this map, I personally, in this situation, knowing what we know, and I'm going to assume players can't hear us. So if they do, spoilers. I really like having Hellions on big, long-distance maps.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you build too many Hellions, you're committing yourself to mech. But even in these early game situations where you might have just a few Hellions and still go bio, I love the control that it gives you with these huge distances where you can move cross map and still feel comfortable enough to return back in time just based on what you see at the front. You have so much more flexibility. it's very hard for Hellions to have a hard counter early on because they just outrun everything else.
Yeah, there are players like 4GG that have really popularized. You do a build. You could do a build like either one of the ones these players are doing with either a fast Banshee or a Raven, a medevac drop, and then you just go into Hellions. And if your opponent was doing something like a drop follow-up, for Hellions, those Marines unloading one at a time, you're going to be able to clean them up really quickly. And it's all about preventing that from snowballing. You just push them back and do harassing, like a player like 4GG would do. And this has become increasingly popular in Terran versus Terran over the last few months. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see either player go for this. Maybe more so INnoVation, because we kind of talked about it being the mecca of the two.
And of course, with INnoVation having started Hellion production, 3 is about the number where we start to see a cutoff point. Very rarely do players go beyond that and then switch back to bio. It's a good number to continue to drop and to not interfere with your add-on production, which is actually probably the most significant part of all TVT build orders, because it seems like everyone's just going to go 1-1-1. There's too many diverse threats that 1-1-1 handles so well that Barracks can't, that the real question is, when are they building the reactor, and with what building? What are they sacrificing? And again, as we were talking about earlier, TaeJa sacrificing his factory production to get that tech lab up on it earlier.
And if you look at the TVT earlier today, man, MMA even showed, he was like, well, I'm not scared to just go for another tech lab and just play a really big, Marine tank Banshee push style, like he did against Bomber on Deadwing, and just say, I'm going to play the one base style on this map because this is the one where you would least expect it, because it's so big. You kind of have to expand. And I mean, that's still a reasonable option for both players. You have the power to siege from the low ground behind those rocks and just move forward with medevac drops. And especially with that high ground position, you have to keep your eyes open for everywhere. You can't just use one bunker to defend a frontal assault.
Yeah. In terms of a long-term play that I'm looking at, I think one of the things that always impresses me about Bomber, that we saw him do in the first 2 games, when both players are in an equal position, where do you get an edge? I think mirror matchups have been one of the scariest things in any game, even RTS or not. What do you do if you both have the exact same set of tools? And what I think is so impressive about TaeJa and about Bomber is the ability to trick you into making a tiny mistake, moving a little bit too far to one side.
Yeah, I mean, most players would agree, and I would say myself that in TVT, positioning is everything. For the bio player, it's having a couple of Marines fanned out across the map. If a medevac goes by, if Hellion run by comes through, you'll lose the Marine, but the information is so much more valuable than the 50 mineral unit that it gives you time to prepare and not lose, what could be a lot more. And for a mech player, that's, it's not quite as flexible. You don't want to have Hellions all over the map because they're not cheap. They take up a lot of supply, but that's why you build your sensor towers. You want to make sure you have missile turret rings where you're weakest and have your Vikings patrolling in the one place where you would probably be most vulnerable to drops.
So one thing that we really haven't seen, it's very unlikely that we're going to see, but if any people have been watching StarCraft for a long time and are coming back to watch the BlizzCon Grand Finals, we don't see players early expand and go for a large barracks base early on. Tell me a little bit why the expand barrack strategy is so uncommon nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, players are just too good is the problem now. I mean, you have guys that'll open up Banshee and they will not take damage just from slow Marines. You need to have something with a little more range, or the auto turret thrown down by a Raven. You need to open fast Viking. But you also get into problematic situations where if your opponent does, say, that quick Marine Hellion drop, they're behind on economy, but being able to micro Hellions, because they're so fast, it's easy to get in a good position where just Marines with no support will die very quickly. So it's really shut down what used to be, the most popular way to open, expand into 3 barracks, maybe get combat shield for a quick push or stim. But it's not flexible enough, and that's why the gas first 1-1-1 builds have taken over the matchup.
Yeah, and of course, as we saw today, bio play in the mid game, absolutely excellent, but that inflexibility hurts so much early on. Whoa, look at this already. I mean, INnoVation is playing the defend now with as much mobility as possible. Nice work, TaeJa!
Wow. Those 4 Marines up the ramp really did the trick.
For anyone wondering what happened, I am also asking the same thing, but looks like TaeJa undoubtedly was just going to reconnect to the game. We'll be resuming replay from that point.
Yeah, but It is interesting to see the way that two players like this can diverge their strategies, because it doesn't have to necessarily be when you look at any player that would open up Raven in the Terran versus Terran matchup, because you had mentioned this earlier, tank drops in the mid game have been
so annoying.
If you play Terran on ladder, man, I play Terran on ladder, it's awful to try to deal with, because you'll just expect it you'll have like your Viking in the wrong position, or the drop comes in at, you know, a minute later than you would expect, or maybe a minute earlier with a few less units, and it's something you always have to be prepared for. But the Raven really helps to supplement it, because you get auto turrets that soak up so much damage, especially if they try to pull SCVs to defend.
The Raven has been such an all-star in the matchup. I mean, you know, when the most recent Raven balance changes came in, it just looked fairly innocuous. I mean, the Secret Missile being a little bit less expensive. Well, whatever. It's largely going to be used for point defense drones in the ultra late game, and for maybe auto turrets and detection early on. But man, the ability to just Seeker Missile some tanks will rarely kill a huge number of tanks, but it will get you out of position. Early game, it defends against all those things. Mid game, it opens up all these chances to do threats. I love that we're seeing INnoVation rush for that. And I think that really goes to show what mindset INnoVation is going into this series with. He chose Nimbus as his first map, and now he's doing like the safest thing ever. I mean, he's getting like Hellions and Reapers for super speed, and he's rushing for a Raven.
Yeah, I mean, you have all the tools necessary to defend anything early that could come, but it also sets you up that Raven can build energy and go for lots of harass. I mean, we've seen that happen at high-level play. I think immediately comes to mind like Red Bull DC. I think Cure had the Raven with something like 28 kills, just dropping auto turrets, and you really actually, you can't just defend it with like 2 or 3 units stuck in your base. Like, those things are beefy, man.
Yeah. And with INnoVation doing this, obviously it's a very safe, but there's another big statement that play makes. TaeJa, I think I am better than you in the late game. You cannot deal terribly much damage early on with just Hellions, some Reapers, and a Raven. Unless your opponent messes up really bad, you're not expecting to kill workers, you're not expecting to do anything magical, you just want to be left alone to do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially, we haven't 100% confirmed yet, but if INnoVation was to go mech, that kind of opener really speaks a lot to his overall game plan, because there are players, and I guess go back to 4GG at this point, a couple of Terran players that they like to open up, and even if they're playing mech, they want to open up very aggressively. Lots of Hellions, lots of Vikings, and you know, he's able to floor players like Pult and MMA at DreamHack Stockholm just with mass Hellions, because he had so many and was so active out on the map that, you know, players that like to play bio just couldn't ever establish that strong core that can actually wipe out the whole force. And if INnoVation doesn't want to play that style, then I think it makes a lot of sense as a mecher that you want to just bring the game out very long, and the cross spawn positions on the map also make that a lot easier to do.
My 2 favorite things about Hellion, if you're going mech, is one, it counteracts the biggest problem that mech has. They're really immobile in the early game, because tanks, when they're bolted to the ground, don't have a very high movement speed.
No, not at all. And you consider how much space you have to watch with that tank. Yeah. You need at least 3 or 4 to cover your whole base on Nimbus, for example. Yeah. It's not really possible on 2 bases to have that many that fast.
And you know, the second thing that I love about opening up with a lot of Hellions when going mech, you get to punish mistakes and greediness so much. Oh, what is that, a 3rd command center a little too early? Well, surprise, I'm in your mineral line, roasting your workers.
I mean, I couldn't tell you the number of like free games it seems like you get. Like you open up with like 6 to 8 Hellions, and the guy wants to do a Marine tank. If those Marines line up, if they make one mistake, you clear those. Like 8 Hellions actually will be able to take out a siege tank, and then the guy has nothing back at home.
I know,
you push across back the map.
Killing siege tanks? That's not what the F12 help menu told me about countering. Scream and line it up like it's 2011 again.
Yeah, I didn't quite realize that tanks were light units. But yeah, it seems like it's like, well, okay, this unit should work, but it's not quite that easy.
You see the SK Telecom banner that, of course, INnoVation is representing. Did a very interesting tour throughout, returning back to one of the tip-top Korean pro teams because he was interested in training with the best.
And we're back in the game now. INnoVation would love to get a read on what TaeJa's up to. His Reaper will jump in, and that's the nice part. You know, the gas first build, you usually don't SCV scout, so having this later scout is really nice. He sees, okay, you're getting Cloak, you have most likely a Banshee on the way, and he can check to see if the natural is starting. Ooh, tries to run this Hellion in a bit cheeky, maybe kill an SCV, but he still has to deal with that Reaper too. Again,
you get to punish little mistakes when you have the much faster army. We see another command center going down, INnoVation.
Yeah, and this also erases mind game possibilities. If he cancels Cloak, this Reaper could come down, he'll see and be like, well, you know, there's no way that Cloak would have been done before your first Banshee.
Oh, INnoVation manages to pick off a Marine. He's gonna get the rest of them. I mean, with the Reaper on the other side, this is a very nice Banshee timing there for TaeJa, barely saving his Marines.
And he gets that information, and it looks like TaeJa isn't going to cancel Cloak despite INnoVation's units being out of his base, so he wants to make something happen. I love the Widow Mine at the top of the ramp. If he runs that Hellion back, it will die. So TaeJa's going to go down now across the bottom right side of the map, and he actually, his SCV scout being killed by that Reaper, maybe he thinks that the Reaper went to the bottom left, and then that's when it killed his SCV, so he still wants to check this bottom right here. He's taking the not quite direct path to his base.
This is a very interesting route. I mean, 99 times out of 100, Terran players just auto-default rally to the natural expansion. That's traditionally the weakest. So, cute little mind game adjustment strategy. INnoVation requesting a pause. And, of course, if you look in that main base, you see INnoVation Reactor Factory.
Yeah, man. This is, I think, something that probably falls in line with our expectations when we look at the pre-match situation. This is the kind of, you know, a lot of people like this because these games can go long and they can go really, really awesome. I think some of the best StarCraft games, especially between these two guys, have been the mech versus bio. You know, the slow positional tank forces against the very fast bio. And this map has a lot of open space for sick engagements.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about like on the ladder. When you're playing, a lot of it is play-based. You have your first big attack, maybe your 2-base all-in, or maybe your 1-base all-in if you're a jerk. These are the sort of things that I just hope we do not see, and it looks like INnoVation is going to treat us to this. He keeps trying to force the games to go on long, and again, even when INnoVation seems to be like down 0-2 in best of sevens, he goes, nope. I have a long-term game plan. This is exactly what he did against Sue. Sue did 2 all-ins against INnoVation. INnoVation said, nope, have my long-term plan. I'm going to keep doing it again and again and again, and managed to pull off a nice 4-2 win with cool, neat new plays in the late game. And I'm curious if he has any of those tricks up his sleeve in TVT.
Yeah, we saw the same when we looked at TaeJa versus Sue from last week. We had quite a couple of really long games. Like both of these guys, like we've seen. I mean, we also saw 2 racks from both of them against Sue as well. So I mean, Sue got like the full serving of Terran from both of these guys. And I guess that shows a little bit more their skill overall, being able to display a variety of build orders rather than crutching themselves on one build because they can play that short or long game so well.
Yeah, and in terms of some of the long-term tactics we've been talking about, forget about it. We're in the game. Let's come back to the early stage.
SCVs are dying day 9. 3 workers picked off, and being able to scout that Banshee when you have the Raven and Vikings, you really never expect to take this much damage, and this can't feel good. This can't feel good for INnoVation because he gave up his aggressive opportunities, and he still took a big hit.
Is really 22 workers is what INnoVation's down to? I mean, the early pauses and the interruptions can sometimes mess with a player's innate timing. I mean, for as much as we list build orders online as, do this at 40 supply and this at 45, most of the time players are just listening to their general sense of rhythm. And INnoVation following up with Blue Flame and triple Hellion production.
Oh, man, this is starting to give me actually a little bit of those 4GG vibes. We can see that he's got gas in the bank, but he is not pushed for a fast siege tank at all. He wants to have a lot of map presence, a lot of map control, and when you play this style against any Terran that likes to go bio, you really can't push out against it. It feels weird that it's like, well, the meching player should be the one on the defensive, but for this early phase, INnoVation has a lot of aggressive opportunities if TaeJa steps down his main base ramp.
Now, something a little funky is going on if we head back to TaeJa's base. In there, we look at the add-ons, and we see a reactor going down very swiftly on there. Oftentimes, you'll see players eagerly trying to churn out tanks early game, eagerly trying to just get the solid core Terran versus Terran unit out. But as we can see, there was an available tech lab. TaeJa could have started tank production. He's electing not to, getting the reactor up. Looks like he's going for a more aggressive mixture.
Yeah, and the thing is, both of these players are also respecting that we kind of mentioned this earlier, they're both very difficult to kill in this matchup early on. Third command centers are finishing up for both players. As Widowmine gets a nice little double kill.
Oh my God, is that Funka observing? Because he just witnessed the hell out of that mine hit.
That was, well, he's going to need to, he's have to come in for the report after that, that's for sure.
Oh no, INnoVation manages to
so
sneak
good.
in.
This just gives you that feeling of comfort, though. He knows there's no barracks production.
Now tell me, do you think it's better that he saw everything at the cost of revealing Blue Flame, or do you think it was not worth it to reveal that yet?
I really feel like TaeJa is expecting mech at some point in this series. I don't think it's surprising enough that you really get the jump on him, but what it does tell INnoVation is that TaeJa does not have any really crazy levels of tech that he needs to worry about, and he also does not have to worry about being attacked at any point. And you could even try to do something as bold as move out for a slightly faster third base, or in this instance, just go for a Hellbat drop. He doesn't need all the units at home to defend.
Hellbat production starting for INnoVation. We're seeing upgrades also begin. TaeJa seems extraordinarily prepared. He's not building any extra structures at the back here. He's just rallying his units, and everything is just a symphony of build order opening. 1-1 upgrades, stim done. Second tech lab to get combat shield very quickly. That's relatively uncommon in Bio vs. Bio.
This feels like a heavily tailored build to deal with the way that INnoVation plays. He's expecting Hellbat drops because he knows he likes to play like this. He's already got the bunker up at the front to help watch against this. He's building another bunker here. Now, these Hellbats are actually coming in at a slightly delayed reaction, it feels like, from TaeJa. His Vikings still have not yet come to snipe this medevac.
What is going on, TaeJa? He hasn't moved any of his Air Force yet. Look, it's just sitting there at the far bottom right in the middle.
His Banshee left.
What is this?
I really feel like TaeJa must be saying to himself, I'm comfortable enough on my 3 bases. You cannot find out that I am not producing medevacs, because what TaeJa wants to do is just overwhelm the Air Force and win a direct engagement or make a slightly later switch into air. And this is such a weird play because he really does not want him to know, and it just gives me the feeling he's hoping to reset the air count, prevent INnoVation from getting any type of siege setup, and then maybe just killing him with one of those air transitions that we were discussing earlier.
God, look at them! Look at the Vikings showing up late, like it's lock, stock, and 2 smoking barrels. Like, we're here, we're ready for a fight. Oh, everybody's already dead. All right, moving on.
The party's over.
And I mean, at this point, we've seen each player make exactly one significant mess up.
So, you know what, though? I'm sorry to cut you off, man, but I just, when you think about this early in the game, you don't really have Thors. And even just that one Banshee, if you wipe out that Viking count this early on, you have the point defense drone to block the opposing Vikings of INnoVation. He could actually just swat down this third base. There's very little
means your tanks are much more effective than their tanks. Here comes TaeJa in. He's going to try to pick off these medevacs. Reaction time too fast.
Nothing here shoots up. Now the Vikings are going to come over, but there's the double point defense drone. You can't kill this. He will have his air superiority. A couple of auto turrets are a cute touch, but as long as that Banshee stays alive, he's in a very compromising position. He has to pick it off.
He has to build these turrets as quickly as humanly possible. This is just to keep his medevacs alive. We see the auto turrets there desperately trying to pick off Vikings. TaeJa is trying to shove back. Uncharacteristic mistake, TaeJa losing that Raven. In the main base, though, we're seeing TaeJa continue to power up. 2-2 is en route, and INnoVation doesn't look like he has any initiative to begin attacking.
Yeah, this has to be just a nice spot, because even though TaeJa can't put a lot of pressure on this third base, he knows that he's reset the air count. He's like, until you build a Thor, which will not help you versus my bio, and Thors are not cheap. Now he's starting to get them out. It's going to slow him down a little bit. Being able to come in here, forcing out all these turrets, he's really causing INnoVation to sweat the potential of there being more than just one starport, of a really big Banshee or Raven switch coming from TaeJa.
To take expansions. The only way to make an expansion safe is to have most of the map covered, to be forcing your opponent back. Right now, TaeJa is facing an INnoVation army that has powered up.
Yeah, INnoVation needs to be careful with this force. He's ahead on supply. If you're ahead in supply as a mech player versus a bio player, you're not really sweating. And of course, the reason why TaeJa's supply is low is because instead of getting, the faster 4th and 5th, we're talking about those barracks finishing around like 15 minutes, when normally you'd have them run 11, 12. That's because TaeJa's taking this forth. That's because he's got this 2-2 upgrades finishing and all these Vikings that he made early on. He's actually thinking further into the game than INnoVation was when he was opening with this this Raven. He's thinking about already the end game phase of this TVT.
And the end game logic represents the core of Bio versus Mech. Mech, stronger in direct engagements, but is slower. They never get to choose when that happens. That's up to the Bio player, who's going to be avoiding, counterattacking. He's looking for weakness. He darts up. He pulls away. This is when the tension begins. Can TaeJa counterattack? Can he get INnoVation into the wrong position and exploit it? Or is INnoVation's muscle going to force the direct conflict and with pretty much get an easy win?
I mean, INnoVation has the army he needs to beat this. If TaeJa charges into this with all these tanks sieged, all these Hellbats in front, and the Hellbats dropped on his army, he's dead. There's no way he wins that fight. So for him, it's all about getting into a position where he can pick off a few units before the tank siege, or cause the army to come down here and then just swing around. He doesn't need to fight this.
This is the dangerous thing. TaeJa has a beeline path directly for INnoVation's main base, and INnoVation knows it. He's starting to pull back preemptively. He didn't need to see that TaeJa was moving in, but TaeJa's still advancing. He's sieging up.
Oh, this is a great position. He's trying to cut him off of his own base. He's forcing INnoVation to come down and take a fight. Now the Hellbats will unload on this army, but a good spread from TaeJa prevents that AoE damage from really accomplishing anything. And just look at this arc of units from TaeJa smashing down all of the Hellbats, and his tanks still have vision from that scan to whittle away at INnoVation's line.
A very awkward exchange. TaeJa ends with a small smattering of Bio, stepping into the natural expansion, picking off whatever he can. That force is destined to die eventually, but not before taking down a handful of SCVs. TaeJa, for whatever damage he does, the biggest resource he bought himself was time. Time to take more expansions.
And keep in mind, he has that fourth base already. He's in a great position to get the perfect army that he could possibly want, and most importantly, his units build a hell of a lot faster than INnoVation's. Those tanks are expensive. They take 45 seconds to make. Those Marauders are only 30, man. You rebuild this army quick. Now if INnoVation wants to take his fourth, he doesn't really have enough tanks to stretch himself far enough that he could take on another army of the same size.
You know, at the same time, even though TaeJa does have his fourth base up, these little tactics from TaeJa aren't delaying much. INnoVation clearly going to be able to take a fourth base pretty soon. And then where is TaeJa's fifth and sixth and seventh? These really high base count numbers are the core of what the Bio player is trying to do. He's trying to win by having so much more stuff.
Yeah, TaeJa's finishing up a couple of extra starports. He's preparing for that end game, but catches some more tanks on siege. The Marauders stepping forward, and now he's cleared out half of the tanks once again. And with these tanks on the high ground, unless these Hellbats can pick off everything, still makes securing that fourth pretty awkward.
INnoVation down 20 supply. All's well when it's Mech versus Bio. That army of INnoVation represents a much higher overall power when compared to TaeJa. TaeJa's goal is to delay this fourth, make INnoVation waste as much time and money as possible securing it, and by that time when INnoVation finally has a fourth, INnoVation has already secured his half of the map. But right now, I don't see a transition coming up from TaeJa.
No, I mean, the last time, aside from this Hellbat drop comes in, it does nothing. The last time he was in TaeJa's base was that first drop. You know, feels like forever and a half ago. TaeJa has been consistently applying pressure since that initial fight in the center. And with these extra starports, he's going to guarantee himself air superiority. He can move into battle cruisers, Ravens, pretty much whatever he wants, because he's been doing a good job of jockeying for position. I'm a little surprised he didn't dive harder on the fourth base. INnoVation has to be feeling happy that he'll be allowed to take this, even if, you know, he can't necessarily defend it. He just needs a little bit more time to lock it down.
Yeah, I mean, the point you bring up about the Ravens and the battle cruisers, that was the transition that I missed. I didn't see that those two starports were building. This is exactly what TaeJa needs to do. He's buying himself time to set up his next big play. He senses weakness on the top. We see the Hellbats from INnoVation drop on the bottom. They're eliminated in seconds. INnoVation's tanks are spread out a little bit too much, but it seems that it manages to hold. INnoVation on the brink of having his mineral line sieged by TaeJa's tanks, but it doesn't matter. Even having an inkling of space is more than enough for the Mech player, but TaeJa's not given up yet.
No, TaeJa has a great path. Even if he can't kill this command center, he's still trading against the tanks, and he's also denying these refineries. You know, you could be a meching player. You could have 1 million minerals. If you have no gas, you're not building, you know, enough Hellions to kill a whole maxed out army of Marauders. It simply doesn't work that way. He needs the gas for tanks. TaeJa's like, yeah, you can have his base, just my minerals. Sure. Fine. You're going to build 1 million missile turrets and somehow win the game against Marine Marauder?
You need the gas. I don't care if you're showing off your new Lamborghini. It doesn't have a steering wheel.
You do need fuel to power these powerful armies, and TaeJa still has the mobility edge. So INnoVation's like, well, take the base on the right side. So you realize tanks are still pretty slow units. He's already here. He's positioned to defend this. And this is just so frustrating. He's still shelling away. He has that air superiority that we talked about, and he's had it forever. And look at this. Ravens in the production tab. Fusion Core is about to finish up. We are going to see, unless he can somehow kill him faster, we're going to see some battle cruisers in this game, and INnoVation does not have the tools necessary to deal with this. Even this beautiful little Viking dance.
Oh, it's a Viking flower.
These guys are like, we have no one to kill, so we're just going to chill for a little bit.
Yeah. The Vikings are like, well, if you need us to spin in circles, we'll do it. Now, this expansion attempt from INnoVation is an unusual one. He will be ahead of TaeJa slightly in expansions. He's cleaning this all up. But this expansion, dropping from INnoVation, just trying to get a little bit of edge, trying to, in some way, maintain a lead in economy.
Yeah. You know, one important thing to keep in mind is that taking this fourth on the right side should be a little bit more doable for INnoVation, simply because a lot of TaeJa's supply and resources are tied up in this BC switch, and we're seeing it in just how effective a single Hellbat can be, because those battle cruisers, they take a little while to build. The Vikings aren't going to deal with the tanks or Hellbats. He's looking to win the game by tech now, not with army, not with positioning. He just wants to wreck him by having an army that INnoVation can't afford to counter.
This is what we talked about before the game. The Ravens don't represent huge damage, but my God, do they get the enemy tanks out of position with those Seeker missiles. We're seeing the siege ups. We're seeing the retreating Raven play from TaeJa. And suddenly INnoVation, with all those extra minerals, making use by getting aggressive, very weird play, and it seems to have caught TaeJa off guard.
He's making the most of this situation. You said he had a lot of mineral income. It's a huge amount of Hellbats, but TaeJa just needs to hold on. He's spread very thin. His BCs are not ready yet, and he's bringing the rest of his army back home. He's going to try to just defend this base on the right side. Keep in mind, he also has the northwest base now, so he's not really hurting for resources, but now we're going to start seeing battle cruisers come out, and tell you what, a single Thor isn't going to cut it. He doesn't even have SCVs ready to prepare against this yet.
INnoVation, a master of mech. Think of how his first push was thwarted, how he struggled to take the fourth. One push steps up, boom, INnoVation now.
TaeJa, not enough SCVs repairing this command center.
He's going to take it down.
A nice pickoff for INnoVation. The first battle cruiser shows its face, and it's immediately targeted down. Not bad at all. I know there's a Banshee or two in production, but I think getting those Vikings out of the way first would have helped. Okay, Seeker missiling these siege tanks is a good place. Actually, he's going to land behind it. TaeJa's looking to swallow this army, and, well, these Hellbats aren't really doing too much.
TaeJa springing into action, but INnoVation hot on his heels. Why is mech so strong on this map? The distances are so close. It's a short walk. It's a waltz over to the enemy base.
And at the same time, TaeJa wants to take out the southeast base. His tanks, his Vikings are moving in. The SCVs fully repairing. Tanks in the back. Hellbats up front. He should be able to get... No!
He doesn't!
He's denied!
TaeJa right-clicking on it, hoping that there was some way he could equalize economy.
INnoVation with a monster supply lead, and now with the economies being tied up like this, he actually has a superior position as long as he doesn't lose this base. It's a nice position that TaeJa's moving his forces, but he's starting to lose some more units back home. His army, I think you tied up so many resources making this air switch, and INnoVation's dealt with the window that he had to punish TaeJa for it flawlessly.
INnoVation playing brilliant mech style, running a clinic on TaeJa in game one, who had a supply lead, a base lead. It takes one attack to secure a strong lead in mech versus bio. Banshees getting produced, no longer battle cruisers, not enough resources, not enough time. TaeJa has to start making pressure work now. And where's that base 5, 6, 7 that we talked about 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, the biggest problem now is it's like, okay, it's cool that you have the Banshees, but you landed all of your Vikings to make that last push happen. And so you no longer have air control. Pushing into this is borderline suicide. These bio forces are going to get wrecked. And I mean, these Vikings, they don't even need to fight because, well, he's not as concerned as much. He shouldn't. I think the Thors, though, you definitely want to keep them as an anchor because these Banshees are actually starting to get a little bit of work done.
With these small positions and extremely fast-paced TVT right now, these Banshees, they're true heroes in this fight. By trading, by exchanging, TaeJa is trying to force INnoVation to be more spread out than INnoVation has resources to. Just the simple siege up on the right with no fast units to sprint up like Zealots or, Marines to drop on top. Those tanks will be unimpeded. And with the Banshees to support, just picking off SCVs 2 at a time, we basically have what is it, one mining base versus one mining base? Are both their thirds roughly mined out right now?
Yeah, they are running very low on resources, and INnoVation, it looks like INnoVation has a big supply lead, but it's actually a significant amount of those supply is in the worker tab. So TaeJa with Bio, if you can still catch those tanks on siege, you know, if we still have the Banshees able to act as a technology counter, then you still have a lot of plays that you can make. So TaeJa's by no means out of it, but he's going to need to make sure he can keep these bases locked down and make these Banshees do a little bit more work.
Yeah, I mean, this is why it's so important to spread out expansions, to take lots of them. If you take top left and bottom right, meching players going to have a tough time trying to wiggle a force one way or the other with such a large risk of counterattacks. These Banshees have got to do big damage because INnoVation is immediately breathing on the most important expansion for TaeJa, the rightmost set of bases.
Yeah, INnoVation has to be feeling comfortable. I really like, he's just locking it down. He's keeping his tanks up. He's like, I don't really need to push you because I know on the top left side with this Hellbat drop that this base wasn't retaken, which means your primary source of income is that right side base. And as you just said, Day 9, with a third mining out, he knows he's making more money. So well, I have my fourth and my fifth. You just have a fourth at this point, and that's not going to be enough to win a long game against INnoVation.
Here is the time for TaeJa to make a play. He's electing to sprint left. He sees that there's tanks sieged up at the south, and INnoVation is going to try to make a counterattack.
Oh, this is such a risky move, sending only a few tanks back to that left side base, and by the time he gets there, it's already taken out. Those tanks won't be able to do much other than try to hold on to the natural, but will this right side base be defended? Without a planetary fortress, you have no way to really buy time.
Oh, TaeJa has an opportunity to get a lot of extra resources by picking off this force. There's only a single tank siege. 1, 2, 3, 4 tanks. No, wow, all get loaded up into the medevacs. TaeJa's going to waltz into the main.
TaeJa runs in, man. You get these add-ons, you cut out the production, but his main source of economy getting picked off. He did finish the southeast base, so he's got a little bit of money coming in, but these factories, the production of mech is the weakest point. You can't trickle out tanks and kill a hefty force of Marauders inside, killing his factories. And how we're gonna start to see him bank a lot of money, and to tell you what, it's not because he's bad at building units, he just doesn't have any production.
Yeah, and tanks are not something, like you say, that you just flood out. You swell it up to a huge number and try to keep it that way, because you can only build 2 or 3 at a time. And amazingly, TaeJa has managed to get almost equal in the tank count, which is the big damage dealer, the big control unit here. There's the scan. Oh no, INnoVation runs right into it.
Big hits. Those Hellbats are what keeps those Marauders from getting nice and close. The medevacs are going to try to push him back, but not really accomplishing too much just yet. I really think that southeast base is the playmaker for TaeJa. If he didn't take that base 2 minutes ago, I really feel like right now we'd see a starved Liquid Terran with really not too much, because INnoVation wouldn't have any pressure on him to attack. He just needs to defend because he's making more money.
TaeJa is playing on the back foot right now, but that southeast expansion, if INnoVation chooses to attack it, INnoVation is going down and right, and TaeJa can cut mid and left and take out that left expansion. Counterattacking, TaeJa's key. He's making as many play attempts as he can, but look at INnoVation's answer. He has so many units in medevacs, he's scanning so well, and the fact that Nimbus is a tiny, tiny map lets INnoVation be in so many key places on a dime.
Yeah, it's so crazy. INnoVation's map awareness, constantly knowing where TaeJa's force is. Like we said, when you look at a mech army, it rarely ever loses in a straight up fight when the tanks are pre-sieged. And as long as you keep tabs on the bio forces, you know, like you said, you have a very short distance between that 4th and 5th. It's not that difficult to move over. You just need to be aware that moving over is necessary.
Yeah, and there's one little hidden factor, a very subtle factor that's giving TaeJa a huge breather right now. No planetary at the south and west expansions for INnoVation. He has only orbitals. He must commit tanks to protecting those. Without those tanks, TaeJa would be able to wipe out all the SCVs in less than 5 seconds. INnoVation has spotted the eastern expansion for TaeJa, though.
Yeah, and you know, that being a planetary, 2 Hellbats aren't going to do the job. He picks off a medevac going by his production. Oh, well, this is another sexy way to deal with it.
INnoVation is playing this brilliantly. TaeJa now, his key mining base in the bottom right. Well, looks like, look, no one's allowed to have bases in this game, all right?
You know, I think we were saying like this was going to be an epic match. stopping this army from just bum rushing those tanks, and he can even try to siege this low ground. I do like that INnoVation himself has switched into the Banshee play. You're going to reach an army composition that's so Marauder heavy. The Banshees actually have a lot of utility.
Very easy for those Marines to fall quickly, and suddenly INnoVation, this is the big play. He's going to begin picking off the tanks. Can there be a scan enough?
Oh, the Banshee's he's just going to kill the Marines with the Banshee. A tank drop, that didn't really do much, and suddenly TaeJa losing all of his Marines and has a huge number of siege tanks exposed. This Banshee switch, how often is the air switch come from the meching player that knocks the bio guy out?
I mean, TaeJa is so crunched for minerals. He's been spending all his energy on mules. He's been spending all his remaining energy scanning for tank positions, and suddenly INnoVation with the cloak. What an amazing play from INnoVation under all that pressure, down to one base for most of the mid-game. I can't even believe this is a 40-minute game. It's been low econ for over half the time.
Yeah, TaeJa had such momentum at the start of this map, and INnoVation, once he just locked down that fourth base, he never looked back. This army is very difficult to deal with because you don't just need Vikings to kill the Banshees. You still have to worry about those medevacs dropping on top of your army, because with so few Marines, you can't really kill anything that's in the air for INnoVation.
Right now, TaeJa is stuck between a rock and a hard place. He needs to get lucky, quite honestly, because INnoVation's transition there. So smart with the Banshee, but we see TaeJa in the spot that he needs to be in. This is what TaeJa needs. This expansion has already been battered. There's not a lot of SCVs here. This isn't as critical. INnoVation pausing, unpausing, and repausing.
Well, there's a tense moment, Day9. This game has, I mean, how much can you hype this match up and then be like, well, I think we were right. This has been a sick game so far, and I really feel like INnoVation has made the best of what seemed to be not really a terrible, but not really a great start to the first map of this series.
I mean, INnoVation, if you look at that game in the first 25 minutes, I would say that INnoVation made one play. Everything else was very typical. I'm going to move out now that I have 3 bases, a little before I get a 4th. TaeJa's pushed it back, and what'd you see INnoVation do? Calm, slow, steady, take a 4th, stay calm, try to hold, try to detect, scan, make sure that there was no craziness coming, and then trying to go for the 5th. Why did he go for a 5th? He had minerals. He didn't have those geysers. Very understandable move for a mech player. But then INnoVation split his army in 2, took out one of TaeJa's bases. TaeJa goes to defend, and INnoVation splitting up his army to take out the other base. That is a hard move to make. Every mech player knows how important it is to keep stuff together, and INnoVation violating that to get a big lead is just an incredible judgment call.
Yeah, I mean, if you send too few of those mech units out to defend one of those bases, the Marauder force comes in, you are going to lose it. It is so difficult to properly defend all the multiple points that a bio player can hit. And like you said, INnoVation didn't really make many plays at the start of the game. He had that one Hellbat drop in the natural expansion that we saw, and yeah, it killed a couple of workers, but at that point, when you've got your 4th command center, your 3rd saturated, you're not as worried about that. It's more focused on having those extra things like his upgrades. And TaeJa's done a great job of getting his upgrades, but he battered away at INnoVation just trading for tanks, and INnoVation was like, no, I'm just going to play slow. As long as I don't overstep my boundaries trying to take a 4 too soon, I'm going to be able to grind this one out, and he's done a great job so far in this map.
I mean, I think one of the easiest errors to make in any matchup, no matter what the situation, is to lose some key units and go, I'm all in, you know, my plan is shattered, you know, I don't have a follow-up, I lost those tanks, well, let's hope these Hellbats somehow are super strong. But I mean, the fact that INnoVation just said, nope, I guess that means I take my 4th a little while later. And again and again and again, we're seeing the same factor return. Nimbus is a small map. It is not hard to push from one area to the other with mech, which is always the biggest problem. If you have a huge map like, oh, I don't know, Terminus or Tal'Darim Altar, one of those old school giant maps, you can't push, you can't mech, you get countered too easily. And TaeJa, this is the moment where he needs to kill that final base for INnoVation.
Yeah, at this point, it's starting to reach not necessarily a standstill, but a big turning point is coming up as, you know, as we kind of saw the pushes going back and forth to the expansion. But, you know, TaeJa's expansion that INnoVation was headed towards, that is, like, everything is on the line for that base. If that base gets knocked out and TaeJa can't sweep the army at the same time to trade it out, I really feel like INnoVation's in a phenomenal position to just choke him out at this point because he won't have enough income to stop that mech force. And That's really impressive because you're supposed, you would normally think that the bio player is the one that gets more bases, puts the pressure on. INnoVation just hasn't been sweating it this game.
And that late game play to get Banshees, ooh, oh, that is not the play that I think is intuitive really at all. I mean, Banshees are terrible versus Marines. You have 12 Banshees, you have any number of Marines, Banshees die, right? It's like, especially in late game, especially once the bio has 3-3. But the fact that INnoVation sacrificed gas 4 tanks to get out 3 Banshees, to spend that money and that time getting Cloak, I mean, now all of a sudden, TaeJa's gonna start saying, well, wait, I can't split my army up. I gotta be careful. What if one of these packs doesn't have enough Marines? We're back into the game.
Yeah, and now TaeJa's saying, hey, if you're going to go for that bottom right base, I'm going to counterattack. INnoVation is pulling back. And normally the bio player has the aggressive advantage, but it just seems like all he really wanted to do was just keep INnoVation from attacking him. TaeJa's really not ready to commit to a big fight. And I think at this point in the game, he's traded out a little bit too many resources to comfortably trade forces out anymore. If he loses that army, INnoVation has the income to happily take a couple losses and then smash down that key expansion in the southeast.
Yeah, I think this southern expansion from INnoVation is very, it's a very cheeky, smart play.
Can you tell which one has the infantry armor? This guy's not losing the fight. He had less health at the start.
Oh my God, he didn't have it selected.
Look at this,
no
boxing champion 2014.
And at the same time, a fight erupts in center map. This is what INnoVation has been looking for all game long. The question is, did TaeJa whittle down the mech army enough? The answer is no. INnoVation